Hi, everyone. My name is Mackenzie Gray, and I'd like to thank you for joining me for our Support Spotlight webinar on subscriptions and installments today. Before we get started, I just wanted to let you know that today's webinar is being recorded and will be shared with you along with links to related articles in our knowledge base, as well as answers for any questions left in the chat. Lauren is in the background answering questions that come in, and depending on how many questions come in, your question might not be answered right away, but it'll be included in the roundup that is sent with the recording. Alternatively, you can always hop on chat and speak to one of our customer care specialists after the webinar if needed. So, if you're here today, chances are you probably are curious about subscriptions and installments. So today we're going to go through some of the ins and outs as well as best practices for both of these features in Amelia. So let's get started. A little bit about myself. I'm an implementation specialist at Amelia, and I have been for about a year and a half. Maybe some of you recognize me from when you were being onboarded into Amelia. But basically, this means that I spend a lot of time in the platform, learning the ins and outs, and working with administrators like yourself and organization owners to really become familiar with Amelia and learn how to set up your business. Joining me today is Lauren Bougie, and she's our team lead for customer care. She's going to be monitoring the chats, as I mentioned before. So if you have any questions, just please feel free to drop them in the chat. So today we're going to be covering both subscriptions and installments, and we'll talk a little bit later about why we're covering both of these subjects within the same webinar. So what we're going to cover today is we're going to go through what is a subscription in Amelia, how do we configure a subscription. We're going to talk a little bit about how a subscription is prorated in Amelia, and we'll talk a little bit about prorata in general. Then we'll discuss some different use cases that I've seen come up and we've seen come up pretty frequently for subscriptions. We'll talk about how to edit the billing date and or the price. We'll talk a little bit about pausing subscriptions. Then we'll discuss how discounts apply to subscriptions, what your clients and you can expect in regards to purchasing and maintaining subscriptions. We'll talk a little bit about how to cancel a subscription, and then we'll take a look at some of the frequently asked questions that we usually get. So then we'll talk about installments. We're going to look into how is it that we set up an installment plan in Amelia. We'll talk about creating a customized plan in a client's account, how to modify or delete a post-dated payment, what clients can expect when they're shopping and they are going to choose which method of payment they want. We'll take a look at where you can find installment-related reports, as well as frequently asked questions for installments. And then lastly, at the end, we're going to talk a little bit about the major differences between subscriptions and installments so that you can know what situation is best for your configuration. Now, before we get into anything too much, if you don't see subscriptions in your account, you can head on to the App Store indicated here and add the monthly subscriptions app free of charge. So let's get started. What is a subscription? Well, a subscription is a membership with a monthly recurring invoice, compared to a regular membership, which might not be recurring but is actually purchased all at once. Subscriptions can have an expiration date, but they can also be open-ended. And by linking a subscription to an activity, you can make it mandatory to purchase it in order to register. So let's just dive right into how we set up subscriptions. So you're going to want to head to the Memberships tab here on the left-hand side, and then scroll up to new membership here and click on Subscription. This is going to open up a new window where you can start configuring your subscription. So you'll want to put your subscription name here at the top, something descriptive of what it is that your clients might be purchasing, as well as a description down below to give them a little bit more information about what they're purchasing. Next up, we're going to add some tags to make it easier for your clients to find the subscription if they're looking in the store. And then we have a few options for when the subscription will become visible in the store. Now, first up here, we can make it so that the subscription is going to be available in the store immediately, meaning that as soon as you're done setting it up, you can save it so that your clients can go right away into the store and purchase it. You can also schedule your subscription to show up in the store later on if you'd like by hitting the schedule button here and then just selecting a date that you'd like the subscription to be available in the store for purchase. Oh, my apologies here. I'm just going to So in this case, we'll set it to hidden from store. Now, our third option here is to keep the subscription out of the store altogether so that it can only be purchased when linked to an activity. So if, for example, you're linking your subscription to something and that's the main way that your clients are going to be paying for the service they're receiving, you can keep it out of the store so that people aren't just purchasing it without registering and paying you for something that they're not actually receiving. And lastly here, you can also make it unavailable from the store if needed, which can keep it hidden from your clients for any sort of internal use. Next up here, we can set the maximum amount of activities that a subscription can be eligible for. So if, for example, you have 10 activities and purchasing a subscription will make it so that you can have access to 3 of them, you can link the same subscription to multiple activities and clients will have a maximum amount that they can register to. Alternatively, if the subscription provides them full access, you can set it to all activities. Then we'll take a look at how a subscription can expire. So we can set a subscription to never expire in that it goes open-endedly, similar to something like Netflix in that you subscribe and then you just opt out when you want. We can also set it to expire after a period of time here, so after a certain amount of months or weeks. And when we're setting an expire after date, we can also choose how the subscription will renew. So either it's not going to renew at all, so when the period is up, your clients are out of their subscription. It can renew automatically, so it'll automatically renew after the period of time that you set. And lastly here, you can have it renew after your client confirms that they would like to renew it. And lastly here, we can set an expire on date if we want to just set a hard date for the expiration. So taking a look at these additional settings here, the first one we're going to see is the billing day. Now, if you leave this field blank, as soon as your client purchases the subscription, their billing cycle is going to be set from their date of purchase. If you do put a billing day here, for example, the 15th of the month, then your clients will be invoiced on the 15th of the month. We'll talk a little bit more about some different best practices when setting your billing day in a little bit as well. Then we can choose when the subscription will come into effect. Now, this might look similar to when it's going to be scheduled in the store. However, in this case, we're actually saying when the subscription's services are going to come into effect. So you can schedule it to release in the store later on, or you can also say you can purchase it now and your services will come into effect later on. Then we have the ability to prorate our subscription, but I'm not going to get too into this for now because we're going to talk about it a little bit more later on. Then we can set our price for the subscription and choose our ledger code. Keep in mind that this is the price that your clients are going to be paying every single month. We can choose our tax options and how they apply. We can also set up age-based restrictions here if needed. Then we can choose how clients can cancel their subscription. Now, you do have the option to say that clients can cancel the subscription themselves, in which case they can go into their account and just outright cancel it, and you'll receive a notification accordingly. Or you can say that clients must request to cancel their subscription if ever the subscription is maybe for a team activity or something that you don't want them to just be leaving at their own volition. Then we can attach adult and child forms to a subscription if we need to gather any information from your clients. And lastly, down here at the bottom, we're able to create a membership card for the subscription if you'd like your clients to have a membership card on file. So now that we've set up our subscription, let's take a look at what this is going to look like in the store. So we're just going to hit this store button here. We'll head over to the memberships tab, and there you can see our subscription in all of its glory. So when it comes to linking a subscription to an activity, you're going to want to head into the activities module and then up to the top to the edit section where you can configure your activities. Then you'll select the activity in question that you want to link the subscription to, scroll all the way to the bottom, and you'll see this subscriptions window. Now, we have two options when it comes to linking a subscription. You can set it so that only one subscription is available for this purchase, which we see right here, in which case that is the only subscription available for this purchase. Or we can say that clients can choose multiple, which actually means that they can choose from a list of available subscriptions. We'll talk a little bit more about this later on. Now, let's take a look at some important considerations when you're configuring your subscriptions. So when we talk about the billing day, it seems pretty straightforward, but what we usually recommend is that you actually set your billing day to the last day of the month. Now, the default behavior when setting your billing day is that on the billing day, your clients are invoiced for the following month, not the month that they're actually being charged for, or not the month in which they are being charged. My apologies. So that being said, if I'm being charged on November 1st for my subscription, I'm actually paying for the services that I will receive in the month of December. For this reason, we usually advise setting the billing date to the last day so that instead I'm being invoiced, for example, on October 31st for the month of November, and that way it's a little bit more clear for your clients. So let's talk a little bit about Prorata here. Now, Prorata is how you can reduce the total cost of something that your clients can pay for if they're not receiving the full service. In the case of subscriptions, if your subscription is, for example, $30 a month and you're 15 days into the month or 20 days into the month, and you don't think that your clients should be charged the full $30 for that month because they're not receiving the full month of service, that's a perfect situation for you to enable a prorata or proration in this case. So let's take a look at how prorata works. Let's say that there are 30 days in a month and that your client purchases a subscription on the 20th day of the month. So if the subscription is $30 and there are 30 days in the month, that means that there are 10 days remaining in the month if they register on the 20th, which means that the total value remaining in the month is $10. That being said, if the total cost is $30 and there's 30 days, we can assume that every single day has a value of $1. So every single time one day passes, $1 will be removed from the total cost. So that way your clients are being charged correctly for what they'll be receiving. So let's take a look at some of the use cases that I've seen come up for different situations. The first use case I want to talk about is what I like to call a single-use subscription. This is really the plainest type of subscription you can have. Your clients are purchasing a subscription for a single service. The best example I like to use for this is imagine you're getting a gym membership and you're paying every single month for your gym so that you can go there and exercise. Next up, we have what I like to call the fees and tuition model, which is a common use for cheer and gymnastics organizations. Now, the fees and tuition model is the combination of an individual membership and a subscription so that you can invoice your clients at once for their fees. Maybe they only have to pay once a year using the individual membership, but maybe they have to pay tuition every month. in which case we can actually directly combine a membership and a subscription to an activity. And lastly here, we have what I like to call the tier system, or being able to choose how many classes you'd like to participate in when registering. For example, if we have, in this case, 1 day per week, 2 days per week, 3 days per week, or 4 to 5 days per week, I'd like to be able to choose how many days that I'd like to participate in. And if, for example, I chose 5 classes a week, I'd be able to register to 5 activities in the program. If I chose 3, I'd be able to register to 3, and so forth. So this gives your clients a little bit more flexibility for what it is that they're going to be registering for. So let's talk about how to edit the billing and or month for the subscription. Now, from the client's account, you can head to the Purchases tab and then find your subscription. And all the way on the right-hand side, we have this Edit button. So within a client's account, we can actually edit the price and the billing day directly. Additionally, from the Memberships tab, if you select your subscription, you can see all of the members in that have the subscription, and you can edit them individually on the right-hand side using this Edit Subscription button. And then it'll pop up a window like this where you can adjust it from there. You can also cancel someone's subscription from here if needed. And if you need as well, you can also pause a subscription for an individual for a defined period of time. So let's talk a little bit about subscriptions and discounts and how they apply. Now we have this really handy graph here to indicate the different types of discounts we have in Amelia and whether or not they will work with a subscription on a recurring basis. Everything we see here indicated with an X means that the promotion will work for the subscription, but only one time, whereas the check mark here indicates that the promotion will work for the subscription and will apply to every month that the subscription is being invoiced. In the case of membership required here, it's currently not supported, but it might be in the future. So all discounts except the membership required discount can be applied at checkout. Discounts are calculated using the subscription price. So if your subscription is prorated, it'll prorate the subscription after the discount has been deducted. And if discount requirements are no longer met, so for example, an item was canceled from the original invoice, then no discount will be applied on the recurring billing date. However, if later on a client goes and they buy a subscription for themselves or another account member is eligible, then the discount will be applied on the next billing day. So if they go later on and they purchase another subscription and become eligible, the discount will apply. So let's talk about what your clients can expect and what you can expect regarding subscriptions. When purchasing a subscription, apologies here. When purchasing a subscription, your clients are going to be able to see the range per month that they have available. And when they select to register to the session, they're going to have the option to choose between the different options available. In this case, Zumba and Pilates for $100 a month, or just Zumba for $80 a month. Now, for an administrator managing a client's account, as soon as the initial purchase and payment in the store is completed, this is what you can expect to see here. Now, when the invoice happens every month for your client in their account, you're going to see a line that says invoice for the monthly subscription, followed by an electronic payment via Amelia. And in this case, we can even see that the payment was processed 1 second after the invoice was generated. If we were to look at the details of this invoice for monthly subscription here, we'd be able to see this here. And lastly, we can take a look here to see the details of the recurring payment and how it's actually created by a pre-authorized credit card payment as opposed to created by an administrator or created by your client. When it comes to canceling a subscription, as we discussed earlier, your clients also can have the option to cancel themselves, or you as an administrator can say they must request to cancel. So from a client's perspective, if they are able to cancel, from the Purchases tab, they can simply find their subscription and hit Cancel Subscription, and then it'll open up a confirmation. From the administrator side, when your client sends the cancellation, if you've enabled that they must request to cancel, you'll see this email on the left-hand side. And if they can cancel on their own, then you'll see the email here on the right-hand side. Now, if you're an administrator and you'd like to cancel a subscription for a client, you can head into or if you want to, my apologies here, if you want to confirm the cancellation from the client's side directly in your Amelia account, you can head into the client's account as we saw earlier in their Purchases tab and hit Confirm Cancellation. Then if we want to cancel the subscription ourselves, we can actually just head back to the Purchases tab and you'll see Cancel Subscription instead of the Confirm Cancellation, which is your client's request. So let's take a look at some of the frequently asked questions that we receive regarding subscriptions. My client wanted Mondays, but purchased Wednesdays. Both are eligible for the same subscription. How can I make that work? So in this case, if your client's activity they're registered to is in the same program as the other activity, then we can just replace one for the other, no problem. If, for example, the activity they'd like to replace is in another program, however, they will have to cancel the initial registration and re-register for the new one. All that being said, you won't have to touch the subscription at all when you're doing a replacement or canceling an activity registration and registering them to something new. Question number 2. A client purchases the maximum number of eligible activities for a subscription. One activity ends. Does that leave room for a new activity in the subscription? And the answer is yes. So if I'm eligible for 3 activities and one of them ends, then I'm only registered into 2 activities, so I actually have 1 spot available to enroll in another one. Question number 3. If you pause a subscription, does it extend the duration? This is the case for memberships, but is it for subscriptions? So if you choose to pause your subscription, unfortunately for the time being, it will not extend the duration. When you configure your subscription, you're really setting up when it will expire, and that will be the case, and it will not be adjusted by pausing. Question number 4, can we edit the price of a subscription for everyone currently enrolled in it? For example, for 2021, a 5% increase. Well, good news here is that we actually have a lot of options available for this. So when you're adjusting the price of your subscription from the configuration window, as soon as you change the price, you'll see this window pop up where it'll give you 3 options. You can say that the new price is going to apply to new purchases only. You can also say that it'll apply to everyone but clients with a custom price. So if you ever did make a custom price for a client, or lastly, you can say that the price will update for everyone. So before we dive into installments, I'd like to just take a good 30 seconds for you to bring some of your questions to our chat. As I mentioned before, Lauren's answering some questions there, so we'll just take a good 30 seconds to really debrief before we dive into installments. All right. So moving forward, what is an installment in Amelia? Well, an installment configuration allows clients to break up their payments into multiple smaller amounts. Installments can be weekly, monthly, annually, or configured as you'd like. Installments can also be linked to activities, memberships, multi-passes, and merchandise. So, what does it look like to create an installment plan? Well, let's take a look. We're going to start by heading to the Accounting and Finance tab in the bottom left-hand corner and opening up the Installments section. And then we'll hit New Installment Configuration. So we'll start by putting our name for our installment plan, and we'll set it to be the default price. Now, in this case, no matter what, if you set the installment plan as your default price or not, your clients will have all options available for them. So it's about whether or not it's a priority for you that they're on the installment plan, or if you'd rather that they pay in full, you could leave this option open. In regards to this second button here, I'd actually like to save this for a little bit later. We'll talk a little bit more in depth about what that does. The next step here is to set our initial installment. So the initial installment can be set in a dollar amount or a percentage amount. And this can be provided either at checkout or at a fixed date if we'd like. So if ever you wanted to postpone the initial payment that your clients can make, you could push it back to a later date. Then we're going to set our future installments. So how many other installments, other payments, other than the initial installment, will your client have to pay in order to pay the full amount? So let's go ahead and set this to 5 so that we have 5 future installments. Now, when it comes to setting up your future installments, you can set them up to occur on fixed dates if you really need to gather the money at specific times, or alternatively, we can set it up on regular intervals. So setting it up on fixed dates is really as easy as finding the date on the calendar and selecting it for all of your installments. So taking a look at the regular intervals here, we're able to choose the start date for the subscription. My apologies, the start date for the future installments. And then we can choose whether or not there's a specific end date. If you need your installment plan to end at a specific defined time, or you can say that there's no specific end date and that there is intervals for the future installments. For example, we can say that the installments will occur every 1 week or 1 month or however you need them to occur. And you can even say that they'll occur from the date of purchase or on a specific day, such as the first of the month. Lastly, down at the bottom is where we can link all of our installments to the different activities that we have in Amelia. Now, something to keep in mind is that an installment configuration is really just a set of rules that you're going to be applying to something else that has monetary value. For example, you might set one of your activities to be $100, and then with the set of rules of your installment plan, the rules will apply to whatever it is that you link it to. So whether your activity is $100 or $1,000, the logic of your installment plan will always apply. Now, we also have a simulation here on the right-hand side, which is used strictly just to test your installment plan to make sure that it's working correctly. So here we can put the total amount that we'd like to test, for example, $500, and then we'll see how the installment configuration changes below. Now, as we see here, our initial installment is $100, but the 5 future installments are all equal payments of $80. As you adjust the total amount, all of your future installments will divide the remaining amount after the initial installment across the rest of your future installments. So if we change the start date here, you're going to see how the dates will change in the simulation. And if we change the total amount, you'll see how the numbers change automatically. One thing to keep in mind here is that this total amount we see on the simulator is not the price for your activities or your merchandise or any of your items in your store. Once again, it's really just to test. Now let's take a second to talk about this option that we skipped earlier on. This option says that it allows that the first installment can be provided within 10 days following the date of purchase. So the default behavior in Amelia when you're setting up an installment is that if your first installment is within 10 days of your initial installment, your first installment will be pushed back one interval to not have your clients be invoiced back to back, essentially. Now, if for whatever reason you did have specific dates you wanted to gather your money and your client's purchase date was within 10 days of that first installment that you needed to gather it, this is a perfect instance that you would use this function. So as we see in this situation, we're paying now, and our first installment is supposed to be on the 22nd, but in fact, it's actually the 29th. And we're missing one of our fixed date installments. So if we toggle this switch here, you're going to see that it'll actually allow that the 22nd be provided. And we can even see how, if we toggle back and forth, how the installment plan adjusts the price accordingly. Now, in the case of fixed dates, it'll always compress it down so that the fixed dates stay the same. It won't create a new fixed date for you. However, with regular intervals, if you don't have an end date, it will just add another interval onto the end. So we also have the ability to create a custom installment plan for one client if you need. If ever you had a one-off situation where a client had a special circumstance or whatever the case. So we're going to do that. We're going to take a look at the installments in a client's account, and then we'll take a look at how we can create those ourselves. So when we're in the client billing section of your client's account, you're able to see this orange button that says View Postdated Payments. And when you expand this, it'll show you all of the installments that are set up on this account. When you want to set up a custom installment plan, in the client billing section, once again, we can head to Make Payment under the Operations button. And this will take us to a separate window where we can process a payment. Once we've put a price in here, if our method of payment is a credit card or an e-check, you'll be able to set it up on an installment configuration. Now, this window looks a little different, but it's actually built the exact same way as the installment plan we just took a look at. So we're going to set our initial installment amount and when it applies. Then we'll set up how many future installments we have and when those are going to occur. And we'll be able to see our layout down below. Once again, we have the flexibility, the exact same flexibility that we have within the installment plan to take a look here and set it up. Beautiful, amazing. Now, one more thing that I forgot to indicate before when we started discussing installments is that an installment configuration does require either a credit card or an e-check on file in order to be processed, for the reason that the payments are processed automatically from the method of payment stored on the account. So in this case, we can choose either credit card or e-check in order to process the payment. We can also choose to send a confirmation email to the client of the installment configuration and hit save. So let's take a look at how we can modify or cancel post-dated payments. So in this case, this client has a $15 discount that was applied to their account. Now they already have an installment plan set up to pay $75 on their account. However, because they've received this discount, they'd like to modify the upcoming payments so that they're not going to be paying the $15 that they've received as a discount. So we can see here from the expected balance that after the installment plan, the client's supposed to have a $15 credit on their account. So what we'll do here is we'll open View Postdated Payments. We'll select the payment in question that we'd like to update and choose Update Info. We'll take a look at our other options here in just a moment as well. So what we'll do is we're going to adjust 3 of these installment plans by taking $5 out of them. So if I update the amount here to $13.75 from $18.75, then the client's only going to be paying $5 less than they would, which will compensate for the discount that they've received. One thing to keep in mind as well is that if you ever did want to update the date of the installment, you can also modify that here as well. Now we can see the expected balance has dropped to $10. So we'll go ahead and adjust a couple more here, update the info, remove the $5, and save. Now we can see the expected balance is down to $5. So we'll do one more. Once again, we're updating the info, taking $5 off the payment, and saving. And now we can see that the client's expected balance after their installment plan is going to be $0. So if you needed to change the method of payment for any of the installment plans, for example, your client has a new credit card or just wants to update it to a different method, once again, we'll head to the View Postdated Payments button. We're going to choose all of the different installments, or if we wanted to do it for a single one, we could as well. But choosing all of them will save you some time. Then we're going to hit Update Payment Method. So essentially, we're just going to go ahead and indicate whether it's a credit card or an e-check that we'd like to change. And we can go ahead and put a new card on file or update the e-check on file. And this will change the card that is being invoiced at the time of the installment. So we'll update installments and we're good to go. Now, if you ever needed to delete a post-dated payment, for example, maybe your client ends up canceling and they'd like to delete the post-dated payments, we can go to View Post-Dated Payment, select the payment we'd like, or all of them if needed, and hit Cancel Payments. And this is going to do just that. So that installment is now removed, and we can see that indicated by the expected balance over here. Now, if your client, for example, came in and they paid you $13.75 in cash, or they paid separately in one way or another, and you just wanted to remove the installment plan for that reason, this would be a good reason to cancel it and then process the payment to register here that the client did, in fact, already pay for that installment amount in another way. So what can clients expect when purchasing an installment plan? So when they're in the store, they can see this Show Installments option where they can see all of their different options that they have. And then when they go to register, they're able to choose the different options they have, whether or not they want to buy with the installment plan or pay the full amount upfront. When your client is getting ready to pay, they're going to see their installment plan laid out exactly how it's going to be invoiced to them on the left-hand side as well. Now, when you're looking for an installment-related report, you can head to the Reports Accounting section, and we have this, this installment status report for just that purpose. Now, we also have our Payment Action Center located under the Accounting and Finance tab, where you can see any expiring credit cards with a planned payment. So if ever you have clients with an installment configuration set up on their account and their card is going to expire, this will give you a little bit of a heads up to reach out to them so that they can update their card on the file so that the payment will actually be processed correctly. So a few pro tips to keep in mind when setting up installment plans and when using them day to day. One thing to keep in mind is that administrators cannot skip and pay later when choosing to pay in installments for the reason that a credit card must be entered. Maybe you've seen this in the past when helping someone out during a registration, that you have the option to skip and pay later as an admin, but it unfortunately won't work for installments. Archiving an installment configuration does not cancel any planned payments a client might have. Those will be processed as you could expect them to. However, the installment configuration is just no longer available for clients in the store moving forward. And lastly, installments are not eligible for drop-ins. They're only eligible for session-based activities. So let's take a look at some of the frequently asked questions regarding installments. When are installment payments processed? Well, credit card installments are processed at approximately 4 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on the scheduled date of the installment. And this is actually the same case for subscriptions, if you were wondering. So the credit cards for subscriptions and installments are processed at 4 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. E-check installments, however, are processed at approximately 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the scheduled date. Question number 2. What happens if an installment payment fails? Well, if an installment payment fails, you'll be able to check the View Postdated Payments section we took a look at before, where you can see the status of the payment in that it's refused, as well as a reason in description of why it was declined, and then you'll be able to see the client's balance accordingly. In this case, they were supposed to pay $142.57, and because it was refused, now they have a balance of $142.57. Question number 3. Can a credit be used when choosing to pay in installments? Well, for the time being, credits do not apply on an installment configuration when checking out in the store. If ever your client did have a credit on their account, you could always complete the purchase and adjust, as we took a look at before, the installment configuration in the client's account. However, this function is something that we'd like to see in the future that will be coming sometime in the near future. Stumbled on my words a lot there, but thank you for bearing with me. So lastly here, we talked a little bit at the beginning about, or I mentioned at the beginning how subscriptions and installments were thrown into the same conversation, but for what purpose? And the reason really is that subscriptions and installments both fundamentally allow for you to be charging your clients automatically onto a card. And for that reason, they have different applications. So we really wanted to spotlight the major differences between the two. For example, when it comes to subscriptions, subscriptions are monthly invoiced and you receive the payments, whereas an installment configuration is only one invoice with multiple payments. The subscription is invoiced every single time and charged every time, whereas the installment plan is only invoiced once, but the payments are processed at the date selected. With subscriptions, a client must save a credit card on their account so that it can be run month over month when they're invoiced. However, with installments, clients must contact an administrator to modify payments or the payment method because they don't need a saved card on their account. With subscriptions, you can set an activity to be $0, and the total cost of your activity is actually going to be managed through the cost of the subscription. So that way, even if you set the session price of your activity to $0, your clients are still going to be paying $100 a month, for example, and they're not going to be able to register for $0. Whereas with an installment plan, as I mentioned before, it's really a set of rules that you apply to something with a cost. So an installment plan, you'll set the total cost at the session level and then link the installment to it so that it can break it up. And lastly, subscriptions can be used for multiple activities in an account, whereas an installment plan can only be linked to a single item at a time. So once again, I want to thank you all for joining us today. And after today's webinar, we're going to send you a recording of everything we've gone through, as well as a list of helpful articles from our knowledge base and all of the questions with answers that you dropped into our chat. If you'd like to access our knowledge base to look further yourself, you can head to our Home tab here and click on the knowledge base. Or if you had any other questions and wanted to start a conversation with someone from our support team, you can start a conversation here by sending us a message. So thank you so much for joining us.